Hello my friends, in this video we will take a look at two interesting features or settings on Panasonic cameras, the i.Dynamic and i.Resolution. I will be testing those with G85, but you can find these settings also on GH5, GH4, G7, GX8 and so on. Let's start with i.Dynamic, which is basically sort of in-camera HDR. Well, it really isn't, but it is supposed to be. So let's take a look at what does it do. In this scene, we can clearly see that the most of the frame is in shadow and there are two windows representing the highlights. This is unedited JPEG shot with i.Dynamic turned off, and we can see that the shadows are pretty dark and we also can't see much in the windows, so the dynamic range could definitely be better here. And here's the photo with i.Dynamic set on auto, and it looks exactly the same with i.Dynamic set on high. In this picture, the shadows like chairs and floor are much brighter and we can also see more details behind the windows. And to me it actually looks good. So what has the camera done here? Well, it did exactly what it said it would do. It has adjusted exposure. In this case, it has underexposed the picture by setting the shutter speed to 1/20th of the second instead of 1/13th of the second, because it was in aperture priority mode. It did that to capture more of the highlights, and it has lowered the contrast to brighten the shadows, which we can clearly see on the floor. Some say that with i.Dynamic turned on, the camera processes the image completely differently and that it takes more information from raw files to provide better dynamic range, but that unfortunately is not true. You can actually replicate this effect in post and get the same results by only adjusting the exposure and contrast slider. So this is not a true HDR, it is just in-camera processing of the JPEG. There is also one more problem. It is supposed to affect only JPEGs, but since the camera changes the exposure settings to overexpose or underexpose the picture, it also affects the RAW files if you are shooting RAW or RAW plus JPEG in semi-automatic modes like aperture priority. We can clearly see that here, and I definitely don't like that. In the video it works exactly the same, it changes the exposure and the contrast, but I have to say that since even the 100 megabits per second video file doesn't contain as much information as JPEG photo, I wasn't fully able to replicate the look using only brightness and contrast sliders. This is the closest that I could get, but if you edit video using full controls, including shadows and highlights slider, you can still get much better results. So should you use this function? Well, that depends on your taste. If you intend to edit your pictures and videos, then definitely not, because you can get much better results editing the picture yourself. And if you edit the RAWs, you can recover much more shadows and also highlights. If you intend to use unedited JPEGs and video, then this function can give you enhanced shadows and highlights for the price of lost contrast or too much contrast, depending on the situation. But if you export the pictures in lower resolution, the loss of contrast or excess of contrast doesn't have to be that obvious. So here the choice is yours. The second setting that we will take a look at is i.Resolution. This is in-camera sharpening. It is supposed to be kind of advanced sharpening. It looks at the frame and it decides which part of the frame should be sharpened. It is mostly looking for contrasting objects, and it is very similar to masking feature in Adobe Lightroom. In my testing, I actually didn't like how it works. It either does almost nothing like in this sample, or it over sharpens parts of the frame, and since I like the sharpness of the pictures from G85 with i.Resolution turned off, I will leave this setting off. Having said that, it can work well on occasions, but you need to find the right settings. Personally, I wouldn't go about standard setting, and in pictures with contrasting objects, it can actually help picture a bit, but it is still quite unpredictable. Fortunately, it only affects the JPEGs. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and also thanks to the viewer who suggested this topic. I hope that you liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.